Okay. Not again.
Just what you always wanted, right? I had it on a picture. There we go. All right, now we're good.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Neal Saito. I'm a systems engineer with TASC. Currently work on the ECTP program, but I'm here today because I also work on the Analysis and Management Framework group. And I'm involved with a lot of the VBA programming for that. Our intern, Gary Marchiny, who is also does a lot of the VBA programming and is responsible for a lot of things you'll be seeing today. Couldn't make it today, unfortunately. He's got a physics lab, and I think we can all remember how much physics instructors disliked us missing labs. So he could not make it today. So Don Kranz is online, and he will be doing the demonstration part of it. This, okay, so today we'll talk about how we use MS Office for some common tasks in IV&V. Then I'll show you the library where it is on ECM and how to get to the various products we're making. We are free to experiment with them. We like to think of this almost as an open source project, so that if people want to build on it, we're all in favor of that. And then Don will be talking about our AMF-based utilities, use VBA, and he'll be giving a demonstration of some of the products that we've developed. So Microsoft Office is just a reality in the business and industrial world. We're not going to be able to get away from it, even if you don't like it. So the Visual Basic for Applications language that's built in behind VBA is very useful for manipulating various objects within within Microsoft Office products. Which is one of the reasons why we made it a priority to implement the framework into VBA. So some of the Common Office has, for viewing and assessing artifacts, for instance, might be doing a comparison between spreadsheets, doing other type of comparisons, and of course, viewing would include output as far as coming up with tables and generating tables for viewing and for presentations. Converting artifacts would be, for instance, extracting a set of requirements from a Word document. So some frequently design documents are where we get our requirements from, and being able to put them into the database or into an Excel spreadsheet. So this is a screenshot of the tree down to the library. For those of us at the NASA program who have access to ECM, it is in the ECM folders under the IVVO office, and you can follow that path down. Once you get to the AMF libraries, VBA, MS Office, under the products tab, the we've broken down the folders into 3 layers: the data layer, the user interface, and the business layer. I'll go into later why the data layer and the user interface layer actually are technology specific. We also have our test suites in there if you ever like to look at those. We do a lot of our development as a test-driven project. So if you'd like to look at our unit test, feel free. So how does this fit into the overall?
Neal?
Yes.
Okay. Could you back up a minute?
Sure.
One of the things I wanted to point out about the layers there, the reason the business layer does not have technology-specific coding in it is because the VBA library is using the same architecture as well as using the AMF architecture out there, and it's an implementation of those objects in that domain model. If you saw the AWV demo yesterday, that uses the same domain model that was implemented in Java. This business layer is the VBA one, which can be used across MS projects. The data layers there, user interface layers there, they're all reusing the libraries that are in that business layer, so that doesn't have to be reworked every time you go to a different MS Office product.
Okay. So the you see we touch on all 3 layers with VBA. Obviously, on the user interface side, we work on the Microsoft Office products. Down on the data layer, we're mostly going to be involved with imported data. All of us are familiar with getting information from the projects either as Word documents or as PowerPoints or even or as Excel spreadsheets. So that imported data, we don't have to change it all. We don't have to do anything to. We just can use that as a data source. Also, we can generate scripts into the for SQL that can be used in the IVVO database, data warehouse. And the business layer, we've implemented all the various business objects you see there. Also, we understand that most of the time you'll be dealing with bulk information when you're using VBA. So we spend a lot of time working on the collections of those business objects. So the collections of the business objects have their own behavior that make it easier to deal with various situations you'll come across. Oh, I didn't. So this is the area that we'll pretty much be talking about today. When you'll see the demonstration how these 3 layers work together. So as Don was saying, this business layer, it's reused by all the Office products. It's the same implementation that we have for XML. It's the same implementation. It's an implementation of the model. It's the same as XML. We implemented it in Java. So there is a certain amount of interactivity that can go across platforms. all of the collections of all various business objects are also in here. And you can't see it here, that we do have it fairly well documented within each object as to what the object can do, what the various operations that it performs are. The data layer, as we mentioned, is technology specific. There are data layers for each target and for each data source. So there are project, artifact, assessment, and action data layers for each type of data source. One of our future efforts is going to be, we talked about implementing say a chain of responsibility pattern type program where pretty much you would enter in the information, tell it what the data source is and what the target is, and it would be able to figure out which one of these layers to use. But right now, we've got them all separated out. And in case anybody's interested, wondering why we have SQL and SQL script, the SQL data layer goes directly, is written directly for our SQL server. So we have a SQL server that we keep all of our project information in. The SQL script actually writes generic SQL text files, basically, that can run on any SQL compliant database. So that's why we have two different
one other point on there too. The reason there's 4 data layers for technology instead of 1 is this really is an interface for getting data from any source that you want, and we didn't want to limit outside products or restrain them, saying that you have to support all these different data types. When we interface with Orbit, for instance, they may only support the assessment data layer. So we don't require that each technology implement all 4 data layers, but if they're supplying one type of data or another, they should at least support that data layer.
And the user interface layer, once again, each technology has its own layer utilities that we've set up. We extensively use the dialog forms that come with VBA, so that a lot of the interaction can be done simply by querying your user. Your user will have can have a lot of control over what is done at this layer. So, and once again, develop your own. We're hoping that people will grab this stuff and start coming up with their own utilities to do their own stuff. Okay, so I'm going to throw it over to Don, and I think Jennifer has to do some magic to get Don on.
Voila.
All right.
Are you all seeing a spreadsheet right now?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. This is a demo spreadsheet we put together to discuss some of the capabilities that are available. The first thing that we're going to do is we go over here under macros, which is where you get at your VBA code. If we look at this, right now I have one macro out here, AMF VBA Center, and this is actually one of those VBA utilities that you could use with any of the MS Office products. And this is kind of a selfish utility. It's one for us to make our development a little easier, and in sharing it, it makes it easier for you to reuse the things you develop. So if I go into the VBA interface here for Excel, I didn't want you to watch me load all the standard modules and some of these, so I did preload a few of them because it'd just be boring. But what I will do is I'll go back to the macros here, and there's certain things that you have to do within VBA to configure your environment to get working. And for one thing, you have to add references and select those, and you have to import the library and such. Well, sorry about that. One of the problems with the VBA editor out of the box is I can't pick more than one module to work with at a time, or more than one class to work with at a time. So if I was checking in a bunch or pulling out a bunch, I would have to do each of these individually. I would have to add each of the references individually, and that can get quite cumbersome. So we built the VBA Center, and you come out here and you run it, you get a nice dialog for checking in and out AMF objects that you want to use for a particular application. These are the ones that are already loaded. It'll tell me. If I've modified them, I can check them out. If I don't need them anymore, I can just remove them from this program. I can import as well. So I'm going to pick a folder, and it tosses me into the folders here, and I can go right directly out to ECM, which is why we showed you the folder structures earlier. And let me make sure I get the right ones here. Add a couple more pieces of the pie here. Libraries. Okay. And first thing I'm going to do is go to the Office user interface to get some generic screens that we have. Get my notes here real quick. If I could type correctly. The reason it's not showing. It must be because of the presentation. All right, we can get this to work another way. Show you the export capability first. Okay. So, no, there they are. So there's two forms out there in that folder. that I want to use, and I can pick both of them, or hit the select all, pick them both, and say, go ahead and add them to my project, and now I have those forms. You get this message to change security settings because it changed them to allow you to check in the references to the various office libraries you needed, and we usually leave it open because we're always doing development, but you can turn that off if you want to. And I'm going to run this one more time. And this time, go to L UI, and we'll grab the Excel user later. Now, so I've loaded those additional libraries into my environment, and I'm all configured now to start using some of these. If I go in here, we'll notice that I've got some more macros now available to me. So I loaded this in. And the one I want to work with is the generate SQL scripts. DB Connect is reused by that one internally, and it's used to set up connections to the underlying data. But if I run the generate script, I get this nice dialog. And if I'm going from scratch, I can just give it the project name I'm working on. If I have a data source, I can point at that data source, and it'll look at all the projects in that data source and say, pick one. And I only have one project in this data source. So I'll select that, and I'll say done. Now it pulls up a script that's interacting with the SQL script data object, and it's pulled up business objects based on the data in the spreadsheet. And I can go ahead and generate SQL script that I could then use as part of a batch job to load my SQL database. So in this case, I'm going to load artifacts, and I want to capture all the artifacts to artifact traces. And if I wanted to, I could limit the data being loaded. I could put in a criteria, only doing level 5 flight software for children or something. And so then I say, I'll go ahead and I'll generate this. And it asks where I want to put it. I'm going to put it on my desktop. Okay. And it's doing its job. Now if I come out here, see I have a whole bunch of SQL scripts out here. And this one here is a trace between artifacts and actions. These are my artifact traces. These are my artifact to assessment traces. And these are my artifacts that I want to work with. So these are all just generated. So if I went and looked at this, it has the SQL statements that are necessary to build that data for artifacts. You want to add your artifacts first, and then once you've added your artifacts, you can go ahead and tie them to other data. The only one I could really run at this point would be the artifact because I opted not to include the other traces. That's interacting with the SQL script and SQL script data object and the Excel data object, but they both shared the VBA object as a means of communicating between the two of them. Next piece of data to show here is we talked about being able to optimize things for different environments, do things for different technologies. We do have a series of objects that sit behind the data objects for Excel. Excel implements the standard data object interface, the same one that the SQL script has, and the same one that Java code has for the AWV. But it wrote a few things behind additional helper functions that help people that are going from an Excel environment. I go out here and I look, at my utilities, you can see the forms that I imported in the modules here. If I look at my classes, I have these things called data maps and data sources, data connection, and the idea behind that is if I get an Excel spreadsheet with data on it, I don't want to have a lot of time reformatting that to be able to get things into my repository. I want to be able to work with whatever data I get from a project. So if you look out here at the beginning, we took this data and we added two tabs to it. One, say, where do we find this data? What tab is that data going to be found on? And you'll notice we have an example here where in one tab we have data for two of our objects, both on the same tab. You can have multiple. It could be a complex spreadsheet. And then once we map the worksheets to the objects, and we say where our data starts, you'll see some of these start on row 3, some on row 2. Then we have our data maps, which actually map the properties of the objects to the columns in those spreadsheets. And so by implementing these helper functions that actually read these two tabs and then configure the data objects interpretation for building business objects, based on this, we can literally get any kind of spreadsheet in that has the data that we want to track, and quite quickly be able to add that to the list and be able to import that to our environment. So the only thing you got to worry about then is bad data, which you're going to write up as an issue anyways. So it is a very useful environment, and sometimes you may not have data coming in from a source. Some of the things that we've dealt with is, let's see, artifact tracing. You'll notice that on our artifact tab we had internal IDs, but the data that came in was unaware of the internal IDs. So we resolved things such as human readable IDs to internal IDs, things of that nature, and taking a look at that sort of stuff up. That's a lot of what we're doing with the Excel environment. I'll go down a little further. Neal had mentioned the unit testing, the idea being that if you get a new data source in, a new type of technology that you're going to use that interacts with the MS Office environment, like say maybe project plans, you can go out and actually test that. So if I come to the files here and I open test layers, this has a test included in it. Edit this. See out here. That we have a series of test cases. We have a test suite that'll go through and check all the interfaces on the business objects, either business objects that are being implemented in this technology or business objects interacting with a data object implementation, and it'll print out the result for that. Now, this whole test suite that was implemented has a number of functions that were added to it for reporting, and we log this all to a report, a TASC text-based report, so that we can see what is working from the AMF framework in this implementation, what is not, and I'll quickly point that out so that we can debug new players in the game quite easily. And all this stuff's available for anybody that wants to plug in their own work. We have some VA utilities, and I don't have access to that spreadsheet right now. This is something that Neal actually put together. We have a make table script, make XSD, make Java class, make VBA class. And these are utilities whereby in the spreadsheet we can define what the business objects are going to look like in the underlying tables. And then from that one definition, we can go ahead and generate code, the outlining code for all those different environments that we're working in. We also have Word utilities for doing documentation conversions, and those are well documented in analyst for the AMF architecture and design documentation, and then we have interaction with things like doors, with exporting things from doors to Excel and then importing them. So I believe I'm out of time.
Yes.
Yep.
We're getting the wrap-up.
You're getting the wrap.
Okay.
So we'll entertain any questions for Neal and Don over in the breakout session. And Don, I think we'll be able to get a screen share up in there if you have a need to share any more demo. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.